The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
Oh, nice one. That was a can pour. Squeeze that can.
A little crush for you there, John.
Thank you very much. Hey, everybody. It's welcome to The Winemakers. I'm John Myers with Brian Casey, Bart Hansen, and Anna Brittain. And you are executive director at Napa Green, and also it's not a brand new event. It's the second time around for Napa R.I.S.E.
Yep, we're truly insane over at Napa Green. And so we're doing our second Climate and Wine Symposium in 10 months. So we did this for the first time last year, and we had, it started as Thrives. I won't bore you with the story. It's returning as Rise. But we had over 60 speakers and over 40 sponsors and over 600 guests last year. And we think it's going to be even bigger this year.
Wow. Well, thanks for coming over on a rainy morning.
Yeah,
Speaking of climate.
Yes.
So,
I think the cool thing about your event that I noticed from last year is that you're not trying to have it all in like 1 week. It allows people to not have to give up their week of working in order to attend everything. So I know that works better for me.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm looking forward to it.
A little more logistical issues involved, though, I'm sure, with planning something multi-week, but yeah.
There's pluses and minuses. It's organized around this concept I developed of the 6 pillars of sustainable wine growing leadership. I got tired of people saying sustainability is meaningless. It doesn't have a clear definition. It's confusing. And I said,
we're getting right into it.
There's 6 core pillars. Yeah, I always get right into it. There are 6 core pillars that you got to be working on to really call yourself leaders. And so RISE walks through all 6 of those pillars, but also makes the integrated connections between all of the different topics.
Well, tell us exactly what RISE is. So people know it's a foundation, it's an LLC, it's a corporation, it's a guide. Like what exactly is it?
Yeah. So Napa Green is a nonprofit. We became a nonprofit in 2019. And then this is our symposium, right? So just like any organization has an event, this is our biggest event. We do other events. And it's focused on accelerating sustainability and climate action in the wine industry. So it's relevant to anyone in the wine industry. It's absolutely not just about Napa County. That just happens to be where we're based. But it's really about anyone who wants to come and work together and get the tools and the resources. And very importantly, the community. We need that support to come together and really accelerate action around sustainability and climate.
You know, with all the talk about that, you're still a leader in doing this, quite frankly.
Yes.
I mean, we've had the doctor from
Kimberly Nicholas.
Yes,
I know her.
A speaker last year at their seminar.
Yes, she was there.
Really?
Yeah,
oh,
she's
excellent.
Great.
Excellent.
As was Karen from Conscious
Container. Yeah.
Also.
And she'll be there again this year.
Yeah.
So thank you for leading this. It's a really good
Thank you.
thing. What's going to be different this year from last year?
It's just a different lineup, a different set of topics, really. And really, as I was saying, we're always trying to make the cross connections. We can't be thinking about this in silos. We're really excited that on day 1, we have Jancis Robinson live with us in person. Some folks have thought she was virtual, but she's with us in person. She's really big on glass lightning and packaging. So we're going to be starting with that conversation. Speaking of wine in a can.
I thought it was apropos for today.
Yes, it is. It's on point. And we're just going to have a whole bunch of really exciting conversations, including culminating with a state of sustainability. For anyone who knows the Unified Symposium, they do a state of the industry. And I thought we need a state of sustainability. And that's going to have Esther Mobley with the San Francisco Chronicle and others.
Great. Yeah. She's really a great writer.
Yes. Yeah. And great to have her out.
Well, and she's lots of knowledge in that woman. Seriously.
For sure.
Yeah, no, one of my favorite in the industry, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Somebody you always read. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Friend of the pod. We had her on during COVID by way of Zoom.
Unfortunately, during Zoom, which we're not all big fans of, but yes. Maybe get her back on in person
just
sometime.
on it this morning.
Can't get away from it.
It was fun to see the inside of her apartment.
Nice.
Well, because it looked like my apartment when I was I mean, there was probably 20 wine boxes stacked up in the corner, and she was basically putting the message out, stop sending me wine.
Enough awesome. Already.
Something you'll never hear out of my mouth.
Yeah.
All right. So
agreed.
So how do people get involved? Not just with the event that you're having, but in general, let's say they're a winery that's not involved. They reach out to you, and what are the steps involved? What do they have to go through? Is there a contract they have to sign? Is there people that come out and check that they're doing the things?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So Napa Green, first and foremost, does facilitate leading sustainability certification for wineries and vineyards. We are right now Napa County focused, although there is conversation about getting bigger. There's an interest in our having a larger umbrella. But we have both a vineyard and a winery certification. You can do either or both because some growers don't have wineries and some wineries are just purchasing their grapes. And there are more than 120 practices you have to do to be a certified winery and more than 100 practices you have to do to be a certified vineyard. And there absolutely is someone that goes out and third party validates that you are walking the talk, which is increasingly important to consumers because a lot of people do just say, I'm sustainable and they're recycling and they have some solar or something. And consumers want to know you truly are taking a holistic, deep dive, meaningful, rigorous approach to this. And so it's very much validated.
So you have 120 points you have to walk. What's the difference between that and organic? How much more detail is organic?
All right, let's get
jumping right into it. Yes. Get into it. So this is kind of one of our number one questions that we get. And I would say it's really important to look at organic as one piece of the puzzle, particularly in terms of addressing the climate crisis that we're in. So we do have a prohibited and restricted pesticide list, and we do have restriction on the use of glyphosate. And then what we have is which is Roundup. And then what we have is a gold level that recognizes our members that really are taking it all the way in terms of herbicide-free and organic. But that's one of just 6 elements of our vineyard program. So one of the things I say on this topic when I get this question is we talk a little bit about sometimes missing the climate for the weeds. There's a whole huge set of practices we need to do all the way from the vineyard through the winery to our packaging, to our distribution. And herbicide or pesticide use is just one small piece of that. And that's part of that 6 pillars of the breadth, the systematic approach. I kind of see it as a filter to look at, is any program or organization really taking a really holistic approach to this? And the other thing I'll say about organic is organic's just for the farm, right? And it's about what you don't do. Don't use synthetic pesticides. But in terms of, even if you get organic in the winery, we won't go deep into this, but that's not related to environmental stewardship in the winery. It's just related to production. So it's not addressing social equity. It's not addressing climate action. It's not addressing resource efficiency. So it's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle that we're trying to work with our growers and vintners to address.
And when you talk about the 6 pillars, can we just cover those and
yes,
instead of touching on the 120 things that people need to do?
We won't talk about all 100. Well, it's 220 across the vineyard and the winery.
Right, because it's 120, but then when you're talking about the vineyard, you add on another 100, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
So I don't think we can talk about all those.
No.
But just basically the 6 pillars so people get an idea of exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. So we start with water efficiency and savings. And I think it would be good to talk about the ROI and some of the economic benefits of these practices. But water efficiency and savings, energy efficiency and savings, waste prevention and supply chain, which is that big packaging piece. We have what we call proactive farming, soil health, and biodiversity. And then we have the social justice, diversity, and inclusion. And that's really a piece of the sustainability conversation that's often gotten sidelined. So we're really trying to bring social equity back front forward in what we're doing. And then all of that rolls into climate action and regenerative agriculture as the big kind of overarching context of all the work that we're doing.
And is that the goal at the end of the day, is to get everyone now? I mean, it used to be organic and biodynamic, but now it's regenerative farming. We're talking about carbon. And I mean, is that the end goal, is to get everyone basically to the absolute cleanest possible farming and absolute best treatment of employees. And
I think the end goal is there's the vineyard, and a lot of people, so I'll probably say this 6 times, a lot of people, when they think about sustainability, they stop at the vineyard. And it's very important that we think all the way through production.
Right.
So I think my end goal would be, would growers and farmers all be farming regeneratively? Yes, but then also they would be doing all of these resource efficiency and climate action and social equity practices in production, and thinking about how you're distributing your product.
Right.
So it's all the way through. We call it soil to bottle. That's what we call it.
So can we do them one by one? Can we start with water? And
absolutely.
So water, people think, okay, probably the instant thing is they're thinking of is dry farming. So we've seen what they do down in Central Valley, not necessarily with grapes, but with fields, that we supply most of the country with produce. And I think what they used to do was just basically flood the fields.
Flood irrigation. Yeah.
But we're not just talking about that. I think you talk about saving. When you're saving water, you're also saving money.
Yes.
Which is important. So let's talk about water first, and then we'll just go through them one by one.
Fabulous. Sounds good. Yeah. One of the things we talk a lot about, where I get people's eyes kind of opening a little bit, is we talk about the water, energy, climate nexus. And the idea is that when you save water, it takes a lot of energy to transport, to heat, and to treat that water. So when you save water, you're saving that energy. And when you save that energy, you're reducing the emissions required to make that energy. So that's just one example of how interconnected all of this is. In terms of the irrigation side, and let's be honest, irrigation relative to water use in the winery, a much bigger area of use.
Not at some wineries. You should see the water run down the drains when you're cleaning up. But
even still, usually. Yes. But I'll talk about both sides of it. But in the vineyard, we do definitely have members that dry farm. I think there's a misunderstanding. Some people think you can just switch to dry farming. Oh, tomorrow I'm just going to start dry farming, and that's not how it works. You have to really plan your vineyard, plan from the beginning to make sure that it's really designed with the right rootstock and the right orientation and the right pruning and all of that to really set it up for dry farming. And it's certainly easier also to dry farm on the valley floor than on the hillsides. Not that it's impossible. So that's not a requirement, but we do absolutely have some members working on that who share their knowledge around how to do that. But for those who are doing drip irrigation, and I do have to say, in terms of agriculture, because you're talking about all the different crops we grow in California, wine grapes are very efficient in terms of water use, but that isn't to say they aren't a big water user, right? And so in terms of drip irrigation, one of the things we work with folks on is, it's not going to sound sexy, but it's called an irrigation distribution uniformity assessment. And basically that's making sure your drip system is actually functioning as efficiently as possible and delivering the water as evenly as possible, because you want all the vines to be getting the same amount of water at the same time. And it's deeply connected to quality. Getting the right amount of irrigation to the vine at the right time. So it's really kind of that monitoring and maintenance of your drip system to make sure it's really working properly. And we give people a report and recommendations and help them really optimize their drip system. And then on the winery side, the biggest users are sanitation. So tank cleaning, barrel cleaning, and then landscaping. Decorative landscaping is another big one. So we really look a lot at improving just efficiency of the process to clean the tanks and clean the barrels, and use new things like aqua tools and things that just use water more efficiently in the winery.
I will never forget coming back up through the Central Valley on July 4th a few years ago when it was extremely hot, and they were just spraying into the air.
Evapotranspiration at work.
It was insane.
Yeah.
I mean, just and
lack of
miles and miles and miles of nothing but wine plants.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we talk about another sort of contentious topic, because I love doing that, which is now we're having these huge heat spikes in the industry. So last year we had temperatures reached over 115 degrees in some places in the vineyard in September.
Yours?
I don't own a vineyard. I think fortunately it'd be too hard for me. I mean, farmers do a tough job. And so a lot of the kind of key tool people have right now to combat extreme heat is either irrigations or misting.
Yeah.
And misting is kind of like the one saving grace right now. And of course, relative to an irrigation, it's more efficient. But I do have questions, and we're having this conversation at RISE. It uses less water than an irrigation.
And we've had this conversation, I think, on the show before, that there's ways to use the misting to keep the ambient temperature down in the vineyard.
Yeah, without a doubt. And also, and then how you schedule those mistings, because what you're trying to do is get air movement through the vineyard, which helps cool it. So it has to be a thoughtful way to misting. And then monitoring that the misters are working correctly is very important, because if the mister is popped off the line, then it's just squirting water onto the ground.
But I think one of the questions I have, and we're going to have this conversation the last day of RISE actually, is around, is water a long-term solution to these extreme heat events?
Right.
Given that, we're doing a little better right now in terms of water, but California is in a constant cycle of drought. I mean, I don't think it's just going to keep getting more extreme. And so what are our long-term solutions? We really have to be thinking proactively and thinking ahead about how we're going to address some of these things, like seeing crazy temperatures, like 120 degrees in the vineyard.
And we've talked about that a little bit. And I'm wondering if you're thinking the same way. It's about shade cloths, orientation, row orientation when setting up vineyards.
Yeah. But then there's a question of, is there a cliff point? Is there, if you hit 115 degrees, are those things, how much can they help you at that point?
Right.
And what are our solutions as we have more events like that? And that's a question.
Bart, what are the hottest temperatures?
That's a question without an answer.
And not without an absolute answer.
Right.
I think misting is one solution a lot of people are turning to now. It's also very expensive.
Right.
What's the hottest climate you can grow grapes in?
Well, I think we're testing that right now from last year. I mean,
I think it got to, I was at Silver Oak at Alexander Valley last year, and they lost about 20%, mostly end rows. And I think they maxed out at 117 that day. So
I heard some got a little higher than that.
Yeah. And, I have a video of a Sauvignon Blanc vineyard that I got some grapes from last year that went through that. And it had a lot to do with how it was exposed to the sun. The side that was exposed to the sun was completely burned and to hard raisins.
Yeah.
On the other side of the same bunch, it looked perfect.
Or it can just even be how you're pruning and changing the cover over the grapes.
And so to answer your question, John, I mean, we're testing those amounts now, and what could have probably saved some fruit in this case was different pruning or leaving more leaves out and stuff. It didn't have to be as bad it was.
I'm just thinking about Chile and some of the South American areas that are.
They also just got hit by fire, as we have. All the regions are getting hit by that as well. Yeah.
There's no answer to that question, really, John.
Yeah. It's going to be something we keep working to answer. Yeah.
We keep bringing that up, don't we?
Yeah.
Right. We're not just going to rip out all of our varietals and plant different varietals that can take 117 degree temperatures. So we got to figure out how to keep Cabernet king in Napa, but figure out a way not to use all this water while we're doing it.
Well, okay. I'll ask another question then. What are the hardiest grapes in the heat, and what are the most fatal? What ones die the easiest?
There are ones, I'm sure you've been hearing. There's people starting to experiment with some new varieties in Napa, so I can only really speak to that. But people trying Triga Nacional, Aglianico.
I think Portuguese varietals have been pretty popular in experimentation. I know Morgan at Bedrock is trying out some of that stuff. But the idea is,
it's not going to take over, I don't think.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And it's going to take time to figure it out also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, everything has to grow and evolve. So we're really always trying to work with people to help them along this continuum as the climate continues to change.
And then, like, how deep do you get into helping them? So if someone says, hey, we can't really afford one of those drip lines that has sensors on every row that can tell us when we need to water, block A, row 7, instead of turning on the entire drip line, like, what are their alternatives for that? If or do you guys provide grant, or do you
a lot of different things. I mean, I would say, I do have to say, we're really distinct from most certification programs, or how most people think about certification. We don't hand someone a set of standards and be like, have at it. And then someone comes out and validates it, and that's it. We are very boots on the ground, providing a lot of hand holding and support. And I think that's a big difference in the success of our program. Because a lot of CCOF, for instance, that's more like, here's your standards, do it. Someone comes out and validates it kind of thing. And so we don't require you use a Thule system or a ranch system or the latest technology. What we require is that you do that DU assessment every 3 to 5 years. So you make sure you're really monitoring and maintaining your drip. And critically, and this is across all the topics we're talking about, we require that you track it and keep an eye on your water use.
Right.
And that's when people start to notice leaks or notice their drippers are having issues and start to just catch things they can maintain.
Awareness, mindfulness, pay more attention to it.
Yeah. So much of this comes down, it's not sexy, but so much of it comes down to monitoring and maintenance.
Yeah.
So much of it.
So what do we do in the winery, in the crush pad? What do we do to reduce the amount of water because those of you that know, that make wine, Bart knows for sure, it's like, 80 to 90% janitorial, and it's all cleaning of stuff. So what are some of the ways that people can reduce water actually working in the cellar?
Yeah, well, I mean, first it's like, don't be chasing some berries around with the hose, right? So like get out your squeegee and some of your basic concepts there. Very important.
It is. It's pressure washers, it's squeegees, it's brooms. I mean, in my early days, it was just get 3 hoses and wash everything towards the drain.
Yeah.
And you can't do that anymore. And especially with so many wineries like in warehouses now, where you're paying for every gallon coming in, and then you're also paying for the wastewater to be processed.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware of that, or else those warehouses will bleed you of your finances.
Well, and then in terms of
pun intended.
In terms of sanitation, I mean, we see a lot of people are moving to steam.
Yep.
That then can use more energy. So this gets us into the energy topic.
Right.
Then there's that, like, from Davis, the idea that you always did this 5-step cleaning of the tank. That isn't necessarily true. So some of those rinse steps there's products now that can reduce the number of rinses you have to use. There's things like Blue Morph, you might have heard of, a UV sanitation technology. So there's a lot of new tools, especially around sanitation, which is the biggest in winery user. And then I have to say, landscaping, especially roses and olive trees. And that's where that monitoring, again, is so important, because we constantly see people, they might have been collecting that data, but no one's looking at it. And they start looking at it and they're like, wow, I lost 200,000 gallons. They see a leak all of a sudden. And especially in landscaping, leaks are common and leaks are big.
The Blue Morph idea is very exciting. I had an opportunity to use one of those very early on. It was very experimental, and the concept is great. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know they're going to be there presenting, right? They're
going to be at R.I.S.E on day 2 on April 6th. I just will not claim to be an absolute expert in that, but it's a UV technology that takes care of the sanitation. It eliminates the need for water and sanitation. And we do have some members using it, including some very, very high end wineries. I won't name names because they haven't given me permission, who are very, very happy with it.
I mean, there's a thing that goes on with it. There's clean and then there's sanitizing. And so you do have to clean. And so therefore there's where you have to really try to watch how much water you use. But it used to be you cleaned and sanitized using water, and depending on what you put into the water to clean. Right. The Blue Morph takes out one of those processes.
And so probably though, and I know this is a conversation you've had before because I've heard you talk about it, is things initially might be a little price prohibitive. So something like that, to put in a system like that, might be expensive for one of the smaller guys. But if once more people start using it, then the price comes down on being able to use that technology.
Well, and again, if you save a ton of water, you're saving a ton of energy. And I have to say, I mean, one of my favorite examples to give, because we do baseline and track energy, water, waste, and emissions for all of our members, is we've seen a member, and pretty small member, around 20,000 cases, 2 members making about the same amount of wine. One of them using 28 kilowatt hours per case of energy, and one of them using 8 kilowatt hours per case of energy. Nice. And that delta of 20 kilowatt hours is more than $100,000 a year in savings.
Unreal.
Yeah. So these can have huge paybacks.
Wait, I want to know what the look on the person's face was when you showed them these numbers. The person that used the more energy.
It's like, what are those? I mean, and it's true, not everyone can achieve exactly the same efficiencies, but that's showing you that someone that's the same size as you is managing to save not just a lot of energy, but a lot of money. Yeah. And right now, cost of supplies are going up. Everything's going up. You want to be reducing these costs.
And you have to start this conversation. And by you guys providing the information, you're starting the conversation. As we say, you're giving them a path to doing it better.
Well, and electricity costs have gone from 26 cents per kilowatt hour to 36 cents in a few years. I mean, it's rising dramatically.
Bart, can you describe the blue morph system?
John, what I saw originally was we used for in barrels.
Okay.
And it was a UV light that was very, very delicate that you put into it. Yeah. So what she's talking about, it's a machine. I imagine it's the same idea, but you put it into the tank and you expose the stainless steel to the UV light.
All right.
Yeah. And they're even looking at this. There's other uses for this too. I love the show Shark Tank, and so there was someone that created a diaper changing table that was using UV light technology, and it was killing 99.9% of stuff.
Interesting.
But the problem was it was a little price prohibitive for people because the government wasn't requiring that you had it; they were just suggesting that you have it. So until it's actually required, then people are like, "Well, I can pay $1,000 for the normal one, or I can pay $3,000 for this really cool one." So what's my motivation?
Yeah.
But when you talk about landscaping and gardening, that's another thing I've heard you talk about is not having everything doesn't have to look so picturesque and pretty, not just at the winery, but in the vineyards.
Yeah. I mean, weeds are a human construct, right? This is a human
construct.
Even
the word weed is something that it's funny. We change so many words because they're not politically correct, or we use something different, but weed should be one of those ones that we absolutely figure out a new word for.
Yeah. I mean, I was driving over here. I think it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. I think some people don't notice it because they're not super familiar with a vineyard. So they're just seeing what they see. But once you start to see there's this dead zone under the vines, and then there's these beautiful grasses in between. And it's like, this actually doesn't look nice. It looks nicer if there's, to me, right? I don't know. This is subjective, but to me,
you must not be obsessive compulsive.
I am not OCD. No.
I think it's people obsessive like the look of something that's very grid-like or very black and white.
Well, and we've said for a long time that's how it should look, and now we have to start thinking about different ways.
You sure can tell the difference, can't you?
That's exactly right.
You know, I mean, you drive along and you see one and the other. It just we were heading over to Sweet D the other night and saw both. I was talking to Joan about it.
Yeah. All right. So did we cover water?
We covered water. We got into energy.
Right.
So we want to go into energy a little bit.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, the number one thing I have to say about energy that we work on is I think for a long time now, people have thought, I'm just going to put in solar. It's sexy. It's visual. There it is. And we've seen a lot of people that did that before maximizing their efficiency. And what we say is you don't want to solarize your inefficiencies. Because if you first make sure you're as efficient or close to as efficient as you could be, that reduces the size and the footprint of the solar array that you need to put in. So that saves you a lot of money and a lot quicker payback, and means that you can get more of your energy use from your solar array. So we really work with people to do a lot of things, everything from, changing out your lights to LED, which is pretty commonplace now. Using night air. We've seen a lot of people with night air systems they aren't using, putting your night air system into use.
Bart, will you just explain that so people that don't know what that means?
Well, night air is a fan, an inlet fan and an outlet. And when the temperature outside gets lower than inside the warehouse, a fan kicks on and you suck in the cold air from below and exits the warm air. Okay. A lot of these warehouses where wineries are and where all the case goods are all stored, most of them don't have huge air conditioning units running them. They're usually all processed with night air. And it's amazing how efficient it can work.
Yeah. And then the other biggest user is refrigeration. I mean, the biggest user is refrigeration in the winery. So really, maintaining those systems and then starting to upgrade to more efficient systems is huge. And then just things like this is a little bit subjective piece. A lot of people have felt like it's just God's word that you have to sanitize at 180 degrees. That isn't necessarily true. But what we've worked with our members on is during that non-sanitation period, when you don't need your water to be at 160 to 180 degrees, turn it back to 120 to 140. And we've had people save over $5,000 a year on natural gas costs just by making that tweak when they don't need that super hot
And
temperature.
another thing is out when you see tanks not in a building, the tanks outside.
Yeah.
Stainless steel tanks without insulation on them.
Yes.
You have to work so much harder to keep those tanks at temperature than you do if they have the foam insulation.
Yeah.
Now, the foam insulation, it's hard. You have to keep it clean. It doesn't look as pretty.
Yeah.
It's expensive to put in.
Yeah.
But there's a huge difference
delta in energy
in how
savings.
much you can save.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of simple there. Energy costs have gone up so much. I mean, this is an area some people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Some wineries are spending on energy use.
Yeah.
So it's your number one area to reduce your bottom line. And it's our first event at RISE. And it's interesting. Last year and this year, the least interest. And I find that so surprising because it's your number one way to save money. Like people are constantly kvetching to me about this is expensive and how do I actually make it make sense in terms of ROI? Save energy, like come work with us to save energy. And then, yeah, I mean, do put in your renewable, although things are changing in that marketplace right now. But first you want to make sure you've really maximized that efficiency.
Yeah. Even local wineries. I know Napa, utilizes wind power. And what was so weird the other day, they closed because they didn't have energy. It was too windy.
Oh, really?
I
didn't know there was such a thing as
I
that.
didn't either. We had a group that was supposed to go there and taste after here, and we got a phone call saying we don't have any power.
It overwhelmed the system.
Remember that day a few days ago where it was just 40 mile per hour winds.
Crazy.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I like the fact that on most days, their tasting room has been powered by wind.
Well, another great thing that's happening, and not all communities have this, but you do have it here in Sonoma and we do have it in Napa, is these groups like MCE, it's called like community choice aggregation, where they're guaranteeing that you're getting more renewable energy from the grid. So MCE guarantees you're getting like 60% solar and wind from the grid. And then if you're one of their customers like I am, and I think you have this with Sonoma Clean Power, you can opt up to this deep green option where you're paying a small premium to get 100% of your energy from the grid. So that's like a paperwork decision you can make where you're investing in the overall grid being a greener grid.
So costing you a little bit more money, but sending the message that we want more of that.
And it's a lot cheaper than installing your own solar array. I mean, essentially you're almost creating your own solar array, but you're just opting.
What is the ROI delta point on solar for the average winery?
It's really not that bad. It's like 7, 9, 10. It depends on what you're putting in. But what's happening right now, and I think it's probably too geeky for anything we want to go into, but they're changing the net metering. The state's changing the net metering rates for solar. And it's unfortunately creating some disincentives for installing private solar arrays. But what it's meant to do, and we'll see how it plays out, is create more incentives to put in battery storage in addition to your solar arrays, so that you're not just producing energy, but you're storing some energy that can help shave your loads when we're hitting peak energy. It's getting into really geeky engineering period. But it's important for anyone interested in renewable energy to note that actually next month it's changing to a new net metering system, and it's going to change some of the incentives and the ways we approach.
Yeah, I've actually seen signs like you would normally see during an election, where you see the election signs. I've seen signs near my house, at least,
protesting,
talking about solar, like get it now.
Everyone, there is a huge run right now to get it all. You have to get your project started by next month in order to stay in the current net metering system. Yeah. So solar companies are doing good right now. We'll see how they're doing in a few years.
Can we talk next about waste prevention and supply chain? Because I know that every pallet of glass that comes in to the winery is wrapped in plastic, and every barrel that comes into the winery is wrapped in plastic. And then
do you know?
And that's not recyclable.
Well, it is. So let's talk about that.
All right.
Yep.
I mean, one of the huge problems for consumers, just on this one topic, because I think if there's another area in addition to organic that consumers tend to be aware, it's recycling, right? But the sad thing is, or the hard thing is, every waste management district has slightly different rules and slightly different things that they can recycle, which we work really closely with in Napa. It's Upper Valley and Napa Recycling. And it's constantly sort of changing, but you can actually, with that shrink wrap in Napa, I'm not sure if that's true for Ecology in Sonoma, if you consolidate it and put it in its own clear bag, it can go into the mixed recycling. Up Valley, down valley for Napa Recycling, you have to collect, and who's going to be able to do this? You have to be able to collect 20 yards of it before they'll come and pick it up and recycle it. Are you doing that?
So I don't know if they do this at other places. My daughter goes to Credo in Runner Park. We call them skins. It's all of the little protective plastic that's around that you don't even think about, like your roll of paper towels.
Oh yeah,
that's covered in it.
Yeah, and that is really.
We collect all the
plastic.
Skins, and I have the biggest ball in my garage right now. It's one of those huge garbage bags, and it is absolutely stuffed. And now we've started on the next one. Yeah. And her school is collecting them, and I don't know where they're taking them, but they're
Ours
doing
won't
something.
take those singly anyway.
Yeah.
I've never been told to collect it by itself.
Yeah.
I mean, we really have to get rid of single-use plastic. We just really, really have to get rid
I'm
of
so
it.
tired of unwrapping everything that doesn't need to be.
It's just the market's gone because China kind of left our recycling market. And so that really bottomed out. Now, I mean, it's like now they are finding solutions, but it's of such low value, that low grade plastic. Yeah. It just doesn't make sense. We just have to stop.
There is an Australian company that came out with biodegradable shrink wrap. That's only available over there at this point.
Yeah, I've talked to them actually.
You have, of course you have.
We're always trying to keep up on all of these resources.
No, well, remember those little rice candies that we used to get when we were kids? They sell them in the little boxes, and then you can eat the wrapper and it sort of dissolves in your mouth.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Saran wrap is the one thing in hotels, and coming from the Fairmont, we got rid of most single-use plastic. The one sticking point was saran wrap. Chefs
I thought you were going to say bottled water. I'm so
exhausted.
No,
that we solved that problem, but it was the saran wrap. Chefs are using it, and there's no real clear alternative to those as of yet. Unfortunately,
it's true. I mean, the thing to say on this topic overall, and we have to talk about glass, right? Is we know that on average 30 to 50% of any vineyard and winery's emissions comes from packaging and distribution alone. So I'm definitely not a proponent of like glass going by the wayside. Glass is very important for aging a lot of premium wines, but we do have to get away from this onerous belief that bigger is better. It's just not true, at least in this area. It's just not true. And we do really have to lighten the glass weight, which is a big mission of Jancis Robinson that she's going to be talking about. So we have a lot of members working on lightening up their glass weight. And then your surrounding packaging, making sure that that's as green as possible as well, and not sending people styrofoam. People reach out and say thank you when you stop using styrofoam, or the wood boxes. A lot of people are like, thank you for not sending me your 6th wood box that I have nothing to do with.
Well, at least that you can, you can put it in your house and use it as a
DIY
little display.
Project.
They use them for the catering department, of course, as little risers for everything. But the styrofoam, I don't even open things that have styrofoam in my house anymore, because then I'm using more energy to vacuum all the little pieces of styrofoam. It's complete insanity.
And it just can't be recycled.
It's the one thing that really can't.
Yeah.
Bart, you've gone to lighter glass just recently.
I have, and it's interesting because, I haven't released the wine because, of course, I'm waiting for some labels, which I think maybe today they're printing them.
We just got ours today.
There you go. It's interesting because the glass that I received, or what they had available, it was flat bottom also.
Okay.
313 grams a bottle, so very lightweight.
Yeah. Very lightweight.
To look at it, it didn't even look like it was a 750 milliliter bottle.
Are you talking about the one for the rosé?
Yeah, for the rosé and the Sauvignon Blanc.
It looked tiny.
They look tiny, but they are 750 mils. Yeah. And you know what? I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, the price of the glass was very reasonable. There was the glass that I got had been melted one time or had been formed one time. There was no use for it. It was going to go be recycled into road base, probably not into more glass. And if it would have been into more glass, it would have had to been melted again and refired. So it is what it is.
Well, another thing is you can absolutely lighten up and maintain a very elegant appearance.
Absolutely.
So I totally appreciate the people like you willing to go all out and not be too worried about how it looks. But I remember years and years ago, I was working with Benziger, and they were kind of like, I don't know, can we lighten our bottles? And we just brought up a lineup, and some of them were lighter, just small changes, the shoulders and the punts.
Yep.
And they realized they couldn't tell the difference.
Right.
and it saved them, reduces shipments.
Yep.
So reduces costs, reduces the weights and emissions of those shipments. So it was kind of a no-brainer once they realized, okay, I can shave 100 grams and not even notice it, let alone shave 300 grams and you do notice it, right?
And I think for established brands, what Bart's talking about in terms of aesthetics, if someone's getting a bottle that's a little bit lighter and might seem, it has a different sound to it when you ting the bottle.
Yeah.
If you have a reputation in the industry as having a quality product in that bottle, that shouldn't make much of a difference.
Right.
And then there, on the other end of the spectrum, you have the people that are doing natural wines. It seems like a perfect fit for anyone doing quote unquote 0.0 wines, because it's all about, that's basically one of the pillars,
The tenets,
their own pillars of their message is that they are doing things that are better for the environment.
Right.
Where I think there's sort of going to be a little bit of pushback is those people that are in the hundreds of thousands of cases, some of the bigger brands where maybe they want people to have some sort of feeling of quality. That's going to be the sort of
but they can make the biggest difference because they
the amount they're producing. Those are the worst players I noticed on the Safeway shelves is the folks making like a $15-$20 bottle of wine, but I have a scale I measure them on at home if I buy them, and it'll be a 900 gram bottle for a $20 bottle of wine, and it's like, no, don't believe that hype that this big heavy bottle means.
I wonder how much the accountants determined they saved at Benziger from changing bottles. I mean, that would be.
We don't have that number, but I will tell you a very impressive number we do have from them, which is that you might remember back in like 2007, 2008, they were just getting tons of marketing attention for their sustainable and biodynamic practices. They got on the cover of the Wine Spectator. They were on an Amex commercial. I mean, and we said to their marketing department, what would you have had to pay for all that marketing? Like if you had versus the free, it was coming to them. They're like, I hadn't thought about that. And so they went back and added up a year of free marketing, what they would have had to pay. And it was over $800,000. And that was back in 2008. So that was
what?
Marketing, we don't want that to be, well, I mean, you know what? For whatever reason, people come to us and work with us, we'll work with them. We don't want marketing to be the main reason, but there's huge value in the marketing.
So because I'll forget about it later, and since I'm thinking about it now, will you talk about scores, how it relates to organic and biodynamic wines?
Scores. Well, yes. So are you talking about this kind of huge study they did of all these different wines? Yeah. So they did a huge study. I think it was out of UCLA. I really want to see this for truly leading sustainable wines, but they did a study where they looked at made with organic grapes. Very important distinction. I'm sure you've talked about on the show, made with organic grapes versus a fully organic wine. Made with organic grapes and made with biodynamic grapes. They looked at like over 70,000 different SKUs, and they found that those that were made with organic grapes or biodynamic were scoring on average 4 to 5 points higher than their conventional counterparts. And I do think that for truly leading sustainable wines, we would see the same thing.
So, I mean, difference between an 89 and a 94?
Big difference.
Huge.
Whatever your thoughts are on ratings, but still, they matter to a lot of people.
Exactly right. Sorry, and I just wanted to mention that because I thought it kind of blew my mind.
Well, winemakers don't trust the ratings or don't think much. However,
they say that.
Yeah, right. But consumers do. Consumers look at
are
that,
still
they
very
go,
tied in.
Oh, 100-point wine from, On Guard up in Kenwood or something like that.
Well, and even John, people like myself, you're an old advertising guy.
Yeah.
A lot of the commercials, like they say that car commercials, when you see a car commercial, it's not for people to buy that car. It's for people to make them feel better about that purchase that they already had. So those scores sometimes aren't necessarily why someone buys the wine, but sometimes they buy it and then they go, oh yeah, I must have a great palate.
It's validating.
It's validating to them.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's no score police, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you can get a great rating in 2007 and not get any other ratings in 2023 and still use that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's like when I see those like signs, I voted the best winery in the world. I'm like, by who? And when did you get that?
Right. There are a lot of those signs.
And the paint's faded.
Yeah, totally. By who? Who was that? Your grandma? I don't know.
Right.
Who came up with that?
Okay, what's the next pillar?
So proactive farming, soil health, and biodiversity. And this is really where you're starting to get into those regenerative farming practices and just how important it is to really work on soil health. And so what we work with our members on, well, first I want to address some misunderstanding. So there are a lot of diehard people doing regenerative farming that won't do any till. We don't require no-till. And there actually are circumstances where you don't want to be tilling all over the place. We do promote conservation tillage or reduced tillage. But there are cases where some tillage can actually be more beneficial for your water retention, for your biodiversity, for your microbes in the soil. So we don't require no-till as part of our regenerative farming practices. And also a lot of people think if you're going to be regenerative, you have to be organic. I think that's the ultimate goal, but you can do all kinds of regenerative farming practices without having completely eliminated the use of herbicides. So those are two areas where we have a lot of conversation and there's still a lot of contention. But what we work with our growers on is every single grower gets a unique, what's called a carbon farm plan for every vineyard that they get certified. And what that does is it walks through practices that most growers are doing, but what can you do more of? Cover crops, compost, reduced tillage, hedgerows, all of those things, keeping your forests intact. And it looks at what more could you do and how much more carbon could you sequester. But that's not even the main goal. I mean, what's great is that's a proactive role that farmers can play in storing more carbon in the soil. And the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has said that's one of the top 5 solutions to climate change. But really, these practices like cover crops and compost and reduced tillage, those are all adding to water infiltration and water retention and nutrient retention and happier microbes and better plant delivery and better resilience to droughts and better resilience to heat stress and drawing in the insects and the birds that you do want that are getting rid of the insects and the birds that you don't want. And so even if we find out, and we're tracking it, that these practices don't store as much carbon as we hope and as the latest science is saying, I'm sick of seeing the articles that are focusing on that, because it's these win-win-win, like no-brainer reasons to do all these practices, regardless of the carbon sequestration. But that's an important piece of it. And so we are focusing on that as well.
Holistic approach. And
So if it's win-win-win, why isn't everybody doing it right now?
I mean, I think if we want to talk about our number one challenge across the board for all of us, right, is inertia. This is how I've been doing it. This is what I'm doing. I have to change what I'm doing. I have to learn something new. I have to train someone in something. It's like, I'd rather not. I'd rather just stick with
this evidence. Bart, answer this one. I mean, seriously, it is work, but in the face of all this evidence, why?
You should see Bart's face right now.
Why aren't? I know.
I don't know, John. I mean, it's a mindset. Like, you have to buy into this, right? You have to buy into. You have to want to do the right thing. And, I mean, we could say the same thing about guns. We have this, we see this all the time and nothing changes. And so you need people to buy in. You need to get to a point where people are afraid and people want to make a difference. And
you see the benefits. There's so many benefits that come out on the other side of this. Right. So, I mean, it does have to start with the commitment. We say, like people have said, have there been people who couldn't get certified? Yes, there have been a handful of people who couldn't get certified. And that mostly comes down to being willing to put in the time. Yeah. Anyone can do this. It's being willing to put in the time. I mean, that's really what it is.
And that's why I think your seminar is so important. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because there are people that will go to it and it will make them make the change and it'll make them do the work to get it done.
Well, and figure out that the resources are there. We are there with the roadmap. And even if you don't do the entire roadmap, it's showing you the steps along the way. I mean, one of the biggest things that came out of it last year was just that feeling of community. Like, oh, right, I'm not just isolated over here at Joe's winery trying to make change and no one cares. Now I realize there's this community of hundreds of people that care about this, that I can talk to and find out what they're doing and share what I'm doing. Right. And that's huge. Just that feeling of camaraderie and support.
Yeah. And if someone shares a story, and says, I was there last year, I felt the same way, but we did this and it wasn't that bad, and look at the results we had, then that will get other people to try it. Yeah. And that's where it has to start. As we said when we had Kimberly Nichols on, if you're waiting for the government to come in and tell you this is what's going to happen for changes, it's just not going to happen. If you're waiting for big corporations to do it, it's not going to happen. You have to do it yourself. You have to start grassroots.
Well,
you have to start with
and
these
one of the
groups.
things I have to say is just this, part of why I work in this sector, specifically in the wine industry, is we have an incredibly powerful platform. So it's not that the wine industry is in and of itself going to take a huge chunk out of global emissions and stop climate change, but it's that we're really at the peak of the agricultural pyramid. Like what we do gets noticed. I know, because I'm getting phone calls asking, how do we replicate this? And so the leadership bar we set, it does build our own resilience and build our community's resilience, but it also causes other people to step up and say, maybe I should be doing that over here in Douro. Maybe I should be doing that. I've got to pay attention because one of the leading wine regions or two of the leading wine regions in the world are doing these things, and I need to be adopting them as well.
And we need all agriculture to kind of buy into this sort of thinking.
Yeah.
And let's face it, wine's the sexiest of all those things.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
And if corn farmers or soybean farmers can learn from it or see that we're making a difference, maybe they'll try.
But then they can do it at a scale that's thousands
makes a
and thousands
difference,
of acres. Yeah.
You said something about why you chose to work in this. We didn't really get into your
and
background.
where did you come from?
Well, we moved a lot growing up, but I did grow up primarily in St. Helena and Calistoga. And I have to say, I grew up from a different perspective in that I grew up very poor. We were actually the one white family in low-income housing in St. Helena. I mean, very poor for St. Helena standards, right? And I left. I went away to college on the East Coast, and I did not intend to come back to the bubble. I'm like, I'm leaving the bubble. And then I got drawn back in. I was transitioning, long story, I was transitioning from working in Vietnam to starting my master's at Yale. And I ended up working with a consultant, John Garn, who specialized specifically in sustainable wine growing consulting. And he was working with the California Sustainable Wine Growing Alliance and with Benziger and with others. And so I got drawn into this niche in 2006, and I've never really been able to escape it. And it's fun. Honestly, it is really fun to have, beyond fun, it's meaningful to have a really niche expertise that not a lot of people have. And I would say it's also incredibly meaningful to me. I'll get a little verklempt. Driving around the valley, these places that seem like castles on a hill to me that were out of my reach completely, that I now work with and that I can now call and say, can I partner with you on this? And that hits me a lot. It's really meaningful.
And meaningful can be fun. I like to play on words there. It's like it should be fun when you're doing something meaningful. Yeah, that should be part of the fun.
Wine is fun. It's true.
For sure.
It's also very political. So there's that side of things.
Yeah. Speaking of which.
Well, there's a lot of politics in this industry and a lot of money in this industry and a lot of people that are still climate deniers. And, I talk about the climate crisis, and some people are like, I still don't want you to be talking about the climate crisis. And
really?
Yeah. After we've had 3 mega fires in the past 6 years in this region, there are still people.
And your mom has lost 2 homes.
My mom has lost 2 homes.
In the last 3 fires.
Yeah. There are still people thinking they can just go about business as usual. And that's it. That inertia and that denial is a constant challenge.
Well, what exactly is Napa Green then?
Well, we are a nonprofit, sustainability certification for wineries and vineyards.
Okay.
And this resource for anyone who wants to level up their sustainability and climate action. We provide a lot of that support and that hand-holding and the resources. I was mentioning to Bart, you did that episode on biochar. We are connected with everyone that produces biochar. We're connected with the air curtain burners that can make biochar. We require at a base level, our members do a conservation low smoke burn, which you were talking to them about, but better yet, that they use a flame cap kiln or an air curtain burner, or they chip. And so we have all the resources on that piece, and that's just one piece. So when you were talking about that, I think at some point you talked about if people want to do this and more, where do they turn? Napa Green is a place that you turn when you really want to see what's my roadmap for sustainability leadership. what are all the things that I can do? What are the resources? Who do I turn to? That's when you turn to Napa Green. Admittedly, right now we're a Napa County program, but the goal of RISE, it's not about Napa. This is for anyone in the wine industry that wants to accelerate sustainability and climate action.
Where are you drawing the most people? Obviously Napa, but where else are they coming from?
I think there's more folks coming from Sonoma, and we're connected to some of the other state programs, so they're sending some people. We definitely have media that are really interested this year. And some community. The community is really interested. I mean, especially you're a little more diversified over here in Sonoma, but Napa, it's grapevines as far as the eyes can see. So the community is very, aware of and wondering about water use and energy use in the wine industry and how are they improving that. So there's some community folks.
So what kind of media are you attracting this year?
It kind of remains to be seen. We got the Press Democrat coming. We, of course, have Esther coming. I think
that'll be covered
daily.
in the Chronicle then, of course.
I hope so.
Yeah.
We'll see. There's no guarantee when someone shows up.
No.
Someone from the Wine Enthusiast. I mean, kind of all your Wine Business Monthly, all your classic folks are engaged. The Register, of course, in Napa. So yeah, we hope there'll be a little more coverage this year of some of the leading practices.
Any consumer media coming up?
I'm not sure. We did get a PR firm this year, which is big. So getting a little more of that media engagement.
Yeah. So let's finish up with the pillars.
Yes, last two pillars. So we didn't get to the social equity, diversity, and inclusion, and all of that rolls into climate action and regenerative ag, which we've already been talking a lot about. But I do think it's important to stress because somewhere along the way, this social element got lost in a lot of the sustainability conversations. And you just can't have environmental or economic sustainability without social sustainability. And there's a limit to how much you can do, especially in terms of a certification standard. Like, can we solve affordable housing? No. Huge challenge in Napa. But there's a lot that you can do just in terms of, it's been interesting the things we found that people aren't necessarily doing, like doing performance reviews, finding out where people want to go and how can you help them and where they want to go, offering free training and continuing education, validating that farm labor contractors are doing the training that they're supposed to be doing and providing the housing that they say that they're going to provide. Of course, there's the living wage and of course there's benefits, but there's a lot more than that of kind of building a community. And then what we talk about a lot too is the ROI of teams and retention. I mean, we're having a labor crisis. Yep. There's a lot of turnover. And when you think about the value of someone you keep and the knowledge they build, especially in a vineyard block by block, if you've kept them for 5 or 10 or 15 years versus training someone up for 2 years and they're gone and you have to go through hiring again, you got to retrain them. That's a huge value loss and cost loss. And so thinking about all of those ways, and it sounds sort of hokey, but I've just seen places where they've managed to build a community and have celebrations and offer people training, and those people stay. And places where they don't do that, and the people don't stay. So it makes a big difference. Yeah.
I think we just had Brene Royal on not too long ago, and I think up in Monte Rosa, I mean, she has people that have been in that vineyard for 30 plus years.
And the quality difference of that, they know exactly what the different microclimates need. And
it's not just the wine industry. I mean, any industry, when you have to retrain someone, when you have to train someone, they talk about, I mean, the amount of time and energy that you spend doing that when someone already knows, just make your people happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Onboarding a new person and training a new person is a lot of work. I know, because our team is expanding. But there's that element. And then the last thing I'll say because I don't want to take up too much time, is that all of this rolls into climate action. So all of those things you do to save water and save energy and prevent waste and reduce shipments and reduce the weight of shipments and have employees that are engaged and then take these practices home with them and all of the things to take care of the soil and take care of the plants. All of these things relate to climate action and building resilience and reducing emissions. And then there's the additional things, we made it its own overarching category, because then there's those next level things like EV chargers and electric vehicles and renewable energy and all of those things that are, that next level step. But all of this is interconnected. All of it rolls into building our resilience and addressing the climate crisis.
Totally.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the event and kind of give us a little overview of what exactly is going on over?
Yeah, we're talking about it at the beginning. So it is really unique intentionally, and that does make it a little harder for some people to attend maybe. But what it is it's a series of 6 half-day events organized around those 6 pillars that we just walked through. And so there's 2 consecutive events each week. So April 5th and 6th, we're looking at energy and water. And then April 12th and 13th, we're looking at waste supply chain and the proactive farming and soil health. And then April 19th and 20th, we're looking at the social justice and then the overarching climate action and regenerative agriculture. So that's nice because people too can choose what they're most passionate about and kind of dip in and out. They don't need to do the
come
whole
for the
thing.
energy.
Yeah, do please come for the energy and for Jancis.
Totally.
Lunch and wine are included. I mean, at the very least, come for some lunch and wine, and breakfast even. But yeah, it's you know, pick and choose what you're most passionate about. We love to see it. You can get an all 6 pack. You get a deal on all 6, of course. But choose the things that mean the most to you and come out. And it does mean you don't lose the whole day. You're out of there by 1:30. And I always find when you go past that, it's like enough. I've absorbed as much as I can for the day. So,
yeah, it's almost like palate fatigue.
Yeah. So
how do people get a hold of you or get tickets for the event?
So go to risegreen.org. And I haven't said yet what RISE stands for, which I think is beautiful. It's resilience, innovation, sustainability, and empowerment, which is a perfect encapsulation of what we're trying to do. So it's risegreen.org. You get all the info on all that. We've got over 60 speakers, over 40 sustainable partners.
Oh, this is a huge deal. Yeah.
It's a huge deal. Yeah. We're definitely going to have, we think, 700 or so people in total across the 6 events this year. So this is a big deal. This isn't a piddling little event, folks. This is a very cutting edge, very leading symposium, and we're very proud because let me tell you, my team's been killing ourselves to make this happen. So we better see all 3 of you there at the very least.
All right. We talked about
one day.
Yeah. No, for sure. And
I'll go. Absolutely. Any day you want.
All right, there you go. John's driving me.
Right. Yeah, I will. No problem.
Bring some wine.
Okay. Do you envision a day where you walk into a market like I go to Oliver's and there's a produce section and one is conventional and one's organic? Do you think, or maybe this is happening already, I don't know, going in and seeing wine broken up into different categories on the shelves?
Well, you've probably just started like another episode of the podcast because I've been talking to someone at Whole Foods. The challenge there is another big question, and it really would be another conversation, is why isn't there just one certification? Why are there multiple certifications? And it's hard for the grocery stores. They need some kind of standardization. And right now there really isn't standardization across what a sustainability certification means. And to me, the difference is, I would say the biggest difference of these different programs is rigor. Our goal is to set the highest bar for sustainability and climate action in the industry. And there are a lot of programs, for better or worse, I would say worse, that have been designed to be more inclusive. Just come to the table. It's not that hard. Get started. And that was really valuable 20 years ago, but that's not the pace we can afford to go at this point. And then providing the boots on the ground support. So in terms of the retail market, I mean, I do think like natural grocers are on the rise and increasing. And there's interest from groups like Whole Foods and how do we better spotlight this? But then the issue is there isn't a standardization across the 6 different U.S. programs.
So you want to be fair if people
It's a challenge.
Brian, are you seeing shelf tags that say organic now or anything?
I mean, people proudly put them on the labels. Or maybe they use little shelf talkers or whatever. But like you were saying, there's some people that use organically farmed grapes, but then they're not making organically certified wine. Or there's people that are farming organically,
but they're not
certified. So there's a lot of little gray areas in there. And so as a buyer for one of those markets, you really have to know who you're getting it from.
But
and
I
what
do
they're
have
doing.
to say there's evidence to show that when people share this story, they put a necker on there, they put the logo, that easy Q, you can put our logos on the bottle.
Right.
People use that information. We've seen stories where someone put a necker on there telling a sustainability story and their sales went up 20%. So we have to get better about telling these stories, and then it will become more prolific in the market.
Do you guys have a specific website that features specific wineries that you are involved with?
Well, so I'm going to throw 2 websites at you because you've now heard about risegreen.org.
Mhm.
The other website is napagreen.org, which is where you can learn all about Napa Green, and that'll get you over to RISE as well. But on napagreen.org, we have a list of all of our participating members.
Awesome.
So
Well,
you
even
can see
have
all
tour
of those
suggestions.
And we
right?
do have itineraries.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to update those because we did those a couple of years ago. But people loved those actually when we rolled them out in 2017. So we want to update those. So yeah, if you want to go to green wineries, you can easily find who's certified and get some recommendations.
That resource is great because working with vegans, I know that there's a website called barnivore.com that you can go to where you know that the wines are
I like that Barnivore. I like that.
Barnivore, that the wines are vegan, and people use it all the time.
Yeah.
So just to have that resource available
Yeah.
for people that are interested in going to these places that are
Yeah.
doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Because I have friends who call me from the grocery store and go, "What wine should I buy?"
Totally.
And we've got to get better at helping them
They're like, this
quickly
label's
identify.
so cool, but I'm just not sure.
Yeah. We've got to get better at helping them find those
Yeah.
wines.
What percent of wineries are now certified in some way or fashion?
Oof.
Well, that's a hard question. I mean, I'm just gonna make that contentious statement that I don't consider like organic or biodynamic certification a sustainability certification, because sustainability certification includes that social sustainability, includes that resource efficiency, includes climate action. I couldn't say for the whole U.S. there's a total of 6 sustainable wine growing certifications in the United States. But I can say for us that we have about 30% of all of the brick and mortar wineries in Napa County certified. We completely redeveloped our vineyard program in 2021. So we have people transitioning to a really next level program. But right now we have the first 15 growers certified, and then we have another 50 in transition. And that's over 16,000 vineyard acres in Napa County.
That's amazing.
And that's out of how many?
The total vineyard acreage in Napa is about 45,000. But for a brand new cutting edge vineyard program, I think that's pretty great.
That's outstanding.
You've made incredible inroads.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
That's
this has been
excellent.
awesome, Anna. Thank you for coming over on a rainy day.
Yeah. Sorry about that. It was beautiful.
We're good.
yesterday.
This has been great. This has been a fun conversation and some great wine along the way.
Thank you. And we'll see you starting next week.
Yes, you'll see us
And,
at RISE, risegreen.org, folks.
All right. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Any shout outs this week?
I don't think so. I think this
Okay.
is about the most important thing that we could do.
Absolutely.
And so we'll just leave it with that.
Great.
Anna, anything else you want to say in terms of contact media information? Are you on IG, Facebook?
Please do find
Instagram?
us on Instagram. We have an amazing social media manager. She's doing a great job. So
Excellent.
please do find Napa R.I.S.E on Instagram and Napa Green as well, and follow what we're
And
doing.
it's just at Napa Green, Napa R.I.S.E.
I should know that.
I think so.
I think you're going to have to look it up.
Okay. Well, it's been such a pleasure. You know, every time we do this, certainly my eyes are open because I'm not a farmer.
Yeah.
However, I'm very concerned. You know, when we had Dr. Nicholas on,
Yeah.
I took she said there's a quiz you can take. That's basically, you know, how bad are you
Yeah.
in your family.
Yeah.
And I turned out a bad guy. Well, you know,
Room for improvement.
absolutely.
Yes.
You know, so
That's why we're going to all of
That's
these
why you're
events.
going to
Absolutely.
RISE.
We're driving me. We're going to learn all
and
about
I'm,
this.
Yes.
I'm there.
You're going to carpool. It's just important.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, thank you
Awesome.
so much.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening, everybody. Talk to you next week.